Open-world games are immensely popular, and Xbox Game Pass provides its subscribers with a diverse selection of these games. Selecting the perfect game can be challenging. Therefore, we've compiled a list of the top 20 open-world games available on Game Pass. Number 20 is Medieval Dynasty. Ever wish to live during the Middle Ages? Well, Medieval Dynasty presents an opportunity to actualize that dream, and the game prioritizes realism over fantasy. Render Cube's title has no mythological monsters or chosen heroes. Instead, players spend their time trying to survive and thrive in a world where achieving either requires a miracle. As a survival game, Medieval Dynasty has all the elements synonymous with the genre, including a heavy focus on monitoring meters and collecting resources. In due time, players will see their small settlement grow into a community that no longer needs to worry about whether they will be able to eat at the end of the day. However, the expansion comes with its own challenges. Number 19 is State of Decay 2. Building upon the foundations of its predecessor, State of Decay 2 offers a string of sizable maps packed with starving zombies. Mirror Valley is arguably the best map in the game, but all the others have their positives, particularly Drucker Country and Cascade Hills. Focusing nearly exclusively on survival, the game tasks the player with building a community capable of withstanding the trials of existing within a post-apocalyptic wasteland. Number 18 is Need for Speed Unbound. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate has a number of Need for Speed games, most of which are polarizing. Hot Pursuit Remastered is decent if someone wants a classic-style arcade racer, while Rivals is underrated. Overall, Heat is probably the strongest of the bunch, but it somewhat suffers from feeling like Forza Horizon Lite. Simply put, the latter games are superior in nearly every way. As such, Unbound gets the nod due to a unique visual presentation that helps set it apart from the competition. Unbound's anime art style is its most eye-catching feature, and if that aesthetic is not to somebody's fancy, they might be better off sticking to some of the other Need for Speed projects on Game Pass. As the latest entry in the series, Unbound controls well and features a gorgeous open world that is fun to explore. However, the game can be a grind, even after post-launch updates ease this issue. Number 17 is The Hunter Call of the Wild. The Hunter Call of the Wild is the definition of a niche product. While hunting game is a fairly common side activity in franchises like Far Cry, it is the sole focus of the Hunter Simulation series. Players traverse rather large maps in search of prey, and Call of the Wild prioritizes realism above nearly everything else. Tracking and shooting targets is a slow and methodical process, one that punishes anyone who gets frustrated or tries to utilize shortcuts. Unsurprisingly, the gameplay loop will not appeal to everyone, particularly since the title removes any elements that might distract from the hunt. Call of the Wild has a wide range of reserves that serve as hunting grounds, and the game features zones from across the world. However, the base game only has Hirschfelden and Leighton Lake, with the rest of the maps being DLC. Number 16 is Conan Exiles. In 2018, Conan Exiles came out to a mixed reception, but the live service game managed to weather that rough start and find a dedicated audience. Survival mechanics are generally a great fit for sandboxes, and many of the genre's strongest projects simply drop players in a hellscape and challenge them to preserve for as long as possible. Conan Exiles largely sticks to that formula, although it also presents survivors with enough tools for them to potentially prosper, provided they are willing to do the work. In terms of content type, Funcom casts a surprisingly wide net. Although not amazing in every area, Conan Exiles works as a single-player package with a fixed storyline, an endless PvE survival game revolving around base building and raiding, or a ruthless PvP option. It is up to the player to pick the server that best suits their preferences. For the open world itself, the exiled lands are unforgiving, spacious but not overly big, and capable of producing the occasional impressive vista. Conan Exiles is not the prettiest open world on Game Pass, but it is generally consistent. Number 15 is Prey. Prey is a sci-fi thriller set in a space station that has been overtaken by an alien threat called the Typhon. As Morgan, players are cut loose onto a world they do not fully understand, and Arcane does a great job of maintaining that sense of mystery for most of the campaign. Combining stealth, RPG, and Metroidvania elements, Prey is a difficult and immersive game that incorporates puzzles, first-person combat, and exploration. The space station might not be as huge as some other maps on Xbox Game Pass, but it is expertly designed and dense. Number 14 is The Evil Within 2. 2014's The Evil Within sought to fill the horror void left by Resident Evil's descent into action territory, and while not perfect, the game did its job. The sequel expands things by taking place in the simulated town of Union, which Sebastian enters to try and save his daughter. while nowhere near as large or packed with side content as, for example, a Far Cry setting. Union can be freely explored even if Sebastian is generally guided down a path. There are not all that many open-world horror projects, since these types of stories tend to benefit from more curated experiences. But The Evil Within 2 shows the genre can work within a less restrictive structure. Even though slightly spread out, Tango's game still manages to produce its share of genuine scares thanks to some fantastic creature designs. In some ways, The Evil Within 2's open design helps enhance the tension, since there is the sense that something horrifying like Anima could always be right around the corner. While it might not have too much competition, Evil Within 2 is the best open-world horror game on Game Pass. Number 13 is Far Cry 5. Far Cry has become something of a love-or-hate franchise, but there is no denying that the games can be a lot of fun. The fifth entry is the only one available on Xbox Game Pass, and while it is not generally regarded as the license's peak, Far Cry 5 has plenty of positives in its favor. Set in Montana, the story follows a rookie marshal as they try to liberate the region from the manipulative clutches of Joseph Seed's cult. The large but not exhausting map is split into 3 parts, each one governed by a disciple of Joseph. While the gameplay loop remains largely the same within each area, the story missions reflect the main cult member's personality. Consequently, the campaign is repetitive but seldom boring. As has become a franchise staple, Far Cry 5's villains steal the show, and they are all wildly different from each other. Faith Seed is especially memorable, although Joseph is also charismatic enough to believably serve as the cult's idol. While not quite as diverse or exotic as some other settings in Ubisoft's series, Montana nevertheless serves as a fun sandbox. Number 12 is LEGO Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. The Skywalker Saga covers the main 9 Star Wars movies, presenting fans with an opportunity to play through the most memorable moments from the original prequel and sequel trilogies. Each film contains a couple of unique missions that are relatively linear in scope, although they do provide some room for exploration. More importantly, the Skywalker Saga also includes free-roaming hubs that are effectively open worlds. Players can travel to and investigate some of Star Wars' iconic planets and moons. While relatively relaxing, these sections can spontaneously turn into battle zones, so they are not just designed for sightseeing. If nothing else, this LEGO game allows fans to live within the Star Wars universe, one that has been immaculately recreated by TT Games. If this video has you hooked till now, let your mouse click that thumbs up button and spread the joy. Number 11 is Valheim. After existing solely on Steam for roughly 2 years, Valheim eventually joined Xbox's Game Preview initiative, making it available to Game Pass subscribers. Regardless of platform, Iron Gate's Viking-themed survival title is nothing short of fantastic. While still a work in progress, the current version is still relatively robust. In fact, the game in its current state is likely to keep most players entertained for longer than the vast majority of fully released open-world projects. Utilizing procedurally generated maps, Valheim drops players in a reasonably big world that is split into biomes. From there, they must craft weapons and armor that will allow them to survive the various enemies and bosses that populate the world. As an added bonus, this title also supports base building, and the system is fairly deep as well. While the combat system is just decent, Valheim shines when taken as a whole package rather than focusing exclusively on one element. Number 10 is Stranded Deep. Stranded Deep is a pure survival game. After a plane crash, players find themselves stranded in the Pacific Ocean surrounded by a couple of islands. As tends to be standard for the genre, the gameplay loop revolves around managing meters relating to stuff like hunger and sleep, collecting resources, building shelter, and exploring. Stranded Deep utilizes procedurally generated maps, so while the core mechanics might not change too much, each playthrough offers something a bit different. Survival open-world games are an acquired taste, and Stranded Deep is a reasonably challenging entry in the subgenre. That said, the title is relatively unique compared to other projects on Game Pass, and it is a good pick for anyone searching for a more hardcore campaign. Number 9 is Immortals Fenyx Rising. Ubisoft loves open worlds maybe a little too much. Overexposure and product exhaustion are very real things, and regardless of the quality of the individual projects, the sheer volume of Ubisoft open-world games in existence has made them feel ordinary. Valhalla is incredible in isolation, but within context, it is just another Assassin's Creed title. Far Cry 6 shakes up its franchise's ideas in a few divisive ways, but the game's biggest flaw is that fact it is a license's 7th entry in the span of a decade. Immortals Fenyx Rising will not impress anyone who is completely burned out on the Ubisoft formula, but it might hit the spot for fans who want something familiar but still different. Inspired by Greek mythology and taking a few hints from The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, this action-adventure game blends colorful visuals with fun hack-and-slash combat and a comedic story. all while delivering a large but not overwhelming map. While optional content is present, Immortals Fenyx Rising gives players room to decide the extent they wish to interact with these quests. Number 8 is Sunset Overdrive. Insomniac has spent recent years crafting superhero-themed adventures featuring everyone's favorite neighborhood wall crawler. However, Marvel's Spider-Man was not the developer's first foray into open-world territory. Sunset Overdrive might be one of the more underappreciated titles of the 2010s, and the game's brilliant movement system ranks it among the best open-world games on Game Pass. Basically a large playground, Sunset City is filled with rails and zip lines, encouraging players to take to the skies and grind their way above the streets. The gunplay is also fun, particularly once players unlock their full arsenal of weapons. Number 7 is Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Xbox Game Pass includes 2 Assassin's Creed games, Origins and Odyssey. Each title is an ambitious open-world game packed to the brim with content, both mandatory and optional. There is not all that much separating the two in terms of quality, and someone's preference might come down to whether they prefer Origins' Ancient Egypt or Odyssey's Ancient Greece. As the latter is the former's sequel, it fine-tunes some of its predecessor's mechanics, particularly the combat system. As Origins is the first chronological entry, newcomers to the series should start with that title. However, the franchise's releases can be enjoyed as standalone adventures, so Odyssey is still an option. Number 6 is Grounded. After a lengthy spell in early access, Grounded has finally made its full debut. A normal backyard becomes a dangerous sandbox filled with terrifying creatures after players are shrunk down so that a blade of grass towers over them, finding themselves in a sticky situation as they try to make their way back home. The protagonist must survive this strange land as they adapt to its ecosystem. Grounded is an imaginative open-world game that takes inspiration from its contemporaries while still carving out a unique voice that sets it apart from the crowd. Obsidian is responsible for some of the most fully realized worlds in gaming, and Grounded is another feather in the developer's cap. Number 5 is Microsoft Flight Simulator. Not every person who owns an Xbox Series X or S will gravitate toward Microsoft Flight Simulator, but there are undoubtedly people who specifically purchased the console to play this flight sim. After spending a year as a PC exclusive, Asobo Studios project finally made its way to Microsoft's latest hardware, and even a couple of years after its launch, the 2021 release is still among the console's most impressive technical showcases. As its title suggests, the game seeks to accurately recreate the experience of piloting a plane, at least to the point that gaming allows. While somewhat realistic, Flight Simulator is relatively accessible by the subgenre's standards, so newcomers who have never sat down in a virtual cockpit can rely on a detailed tutorial to teach them the basics. Generally, Flight Simulator's gameplay is structured around flight plans, which are linear by design. However, players are given free rein in how they approach routes since they can plan their own flights through the world map mode. Essentially, Earth is Microsoft Flight Simulator's open world, and while players might not be able to land and go for a stroll, they can witness the planet's majesty from the skies. Number 4 is Middle-earth Shadow of War. Although Shadow of Mordor was a fantastic adventure in its own right, Shadow of War perfected the franchise's proposed mechanics and elevated them by giving players the freedom to explore a large open world. Those who fell in love with the original release's gameplay elements will enjoy a finely tuned system that includes new moves and abilities while maintaining the engaging combat from the flagship title. Shadow of War also enhanced the Nemesis system, giving the world even more life as players find themselves occasionally harassed by enemies that previously defeated them. This feature is the franchise's main selling point, and it deserves all the praise flung its way since it makes the world seem like it's morphing to match the player's actions. Number 3 is Forza Horizon 5. Playground Games' Forza Horizon series has served as a reliable source for ambitious open-world racing games, and the 5th entry maintains the high standards synonymous with the license. Set in Mexico, Forza Horizon 5's map is considerably more diverse than its immediate predecessor, with each region having its own aesthetic that allows it to stand out. Like with all of these games, Forza Horizon 5 seamlessly blends realistic visuals and an authentic world with over-the-top arcade-style gameplay, and it is a perfect pairing. Number 2 is Grand Theft Auto 5. GTA 5 is comfortably among the most famous open-world games of all time. Rockstar's masterpiece debuted at the tail end of the Xbox 360 era, garnering universal praise for its gorgeous Los Santos setting, enjoyable story, multiple protagonists, and addictive gameplay. Since then, the game's single player has been entirely overshadowed by GTA Online, a multiplayer mode that is also part of the package available through Game Pass. Rockstar regularly updates this content with new events or items, so while the mode's chaotic nature might not be for everyone, those who enjoy it have a lot of material at their fingertips. Despite initially debuting in 2013, GTA 5's campaign holds up well, especially since Rockstar has released native Xbox One and Xbox Series X and S versions. The narrative centers around a trio of criminals who have wildly different temperaments, backgrounds, and motives. Their dynamic starts out interesting and only improves as the story progresses. Outside the main missions, GTA 5 is absolutely stacked with optional content designed to simply allow players to spread mayhem across Los Santos streets. Number 1 is Starfield. Undoubtedly, Starfield will be remembered as the biggest title added to Xbox Game Pass in 2023. Bethesda's latest RPG has been in development for a very long time, and it is also the developer's first IP in decades. Consequently, the game was always going to be huge, regardless of whether it lived up to the hype or not. While perhaps not attracting Skyrim levels of praise, Starfield is nevertheless another impressive feather in Bethesda's cap, one that represents a step forward in a few areas. Its character customization, gunplay, and companions might just be the best in the company's history, at least when solely counting games developed by Bethesda Game Studios. While it takes a few hours to get going and can be largely ignored, the main story is pretty good too. Like most of Bethesda's flagship releases, Starfield is open world, although it is a different breed than Skyrim or Fallout 4. As the map is spread over a large selection of planets, players will be spending a lot of time fast traveling from place to place, which breaks immersion to an extent. It is possible to jump on a ship and fly through space, but it is not a big part of the overall experience, nor can players land on planets. Basically, Starfield does not have a seamless world that players can traverse in its entirety without a loading screen, instead offering smaller self-contained areas that make up a larger universe. This is not necessarily a criticism, but it does grant the game a different flavor than most of Bethesda's other classic open-world RPGs. As we wrap up, a big thank you for sticking around till now. If you've enjoyed what you've seen, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Thank you for watching.